I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I'm with my friend, Mr. Paul Reilly. He is both a speaker, author, and a sales trainer. And you know what I'm excited about? We're going to be talking about selling through tough times. That's what we're going to be talking about. And you know what? A lot of you are faced right now with tough times, whether it's economics or whether it is not being able to hit your quota or the KPIs that have been set out before you. So, Mr. Paul Reilly, welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, man.
Mario, it's a privilege to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, I always like to start out with giving you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been around for a long time. We're obviously going to talk about the new, kind of the new book within the last year, the great book that you wrote, Selling Through Tough Times. So before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So, what we're known for here is, Cardinals baseball, Anheuser-Busch, right, is the founder there, and also world-class sales training, since that is the headquarter of, Tom Reilly Training based here. But what I do is I have one mission, and that is to help salespeople go out there and compete more profitably by selling on value and not price. And how I do that is me and my team, we conduct training seminars, keynote presentations, all that good stuff. Beyond that, though, I'm married. I've got 3 daughters, which means I have 3 weddings to pay for. Also, I am an avid golfer. I absolutely love golf. That's one of my favorite things to do. So that's just a little bit about me and what I do.
Well, that's a lot of weddings to pay for, plus colleges and weddings. So we know
Oh,
that you're
yeah,
serious about selling,
that's
actually.
right. I'm motivated.
That's right. You're motivated. Fantastic. I always ask all my guests something very special question, and you're no different. So do me a favor. Tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles. And Paul, I'm looking for something juicy.
Well, the one thing I was going to tell you, the statute of limitations has not yet expired, so I can't tell you that. All right.
All right. Well, don't
But
confess any grave sins here.
here's what I will tell you. As you mentioned, I'm a professional speaker. When I got into this business, I'll be honest with you, and I haven't really shared this with anyone, but I had almost just a debilitating case of stage fright. I mean, I could not. Man, I couldn't stand getting in front of a group. I remember the first few times I gave a speech. This was before even I got into the speaking business. I'd get up there, man, my heart would pound. I'd have trouble breathing. I would kind of freak out. It would take me a little while to settle down. But that's something I ended up, going through Toastmasters, did some coaching, did a bunch of things, and went from that to becoming a certified speaking professional through the National Speakers Association. And it's a passion of mine, which wasn't always the case. So yeah, a little bit about me, maybe unveiling the curtain a little bit and let you into the secret.
So, one tip for those that are afraid to be in front of a camera and
Mhm.
or an audience, what would you say to them?
I would say join Toastmasters. That
Okay.
Toastmasters, what a great organization. Um, Plain and simple, it gives you reps in front of a group. I'm a big believer that if you continuously do things that scare you, you're not only gonna become better as a person, you're gonna step outside your comfort zone, but you are not only gonna become good at what that thing is that you're afraid of, you're gonna become great at it. So it gives you more reps, gives you an opportunity to learn in an environment where people are rooting for you. They want you to be successful. So really can't say enough great things about Toastmasters. And there's one in pretty much every
Everywhere.
everywhere. I mean, internationally. So great organization.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that tip. And interesting. Most of us feel that way when we go onto stage. I don't think it's, even in front of screens when you're in front of customers. It's nerve wracking. I remember my first time being on a conference call and people seeing me, and your palms start getting sweaty. It's not something that is very easy for people to just do. It actually takes work. Like everything else, including sales. So
Absolutely.
let's spend some time, selling through tough times. Love the title of the book. Love the book,
Yep.
and it has. It clearly focuses in on something that everybody needs
Mhm.
right now. But the first, give me the on selling through tough times. Define for me what's tough times.
Sure. So tough times is really a catch-all term for several different factors. For example, we are currently in a recession, right? That classifies as tough times. That would be I would say, the most universal definition of tough times. But tough times also exist for that brand new salesperson that is struggling to gain traction. Tough times exist when you sell a product, yet it's not in stock. Tough times exist when you're facing inflation. Tough times exist when you're in a sales slump. So tough times are unique not only to the individual but also the industry. Certain industries face tough times. You think about it during the pandemic, there were winners and there were losers. There were some companies that were doing extremely well, other industries that were really struggling. I think, at one point, crude oil got below $0 per barrel by some freak incident on the contracts and futures, things like that. Crude oil dipped below $0 a barrel, which um, that's going to create some tough times. So tough times exist as rolling recessions. Recessions, companies can face specific tough times if it's a tough competitor. So it's really a catch-all term. All right.
Gotcha. So, interestingly enough, it would be nice for that crude oil to go back down to $0, wouldn't
It would.
it?
I wouldn't hear any complaints from me.
Yeah, not in the $6 to $7 range, which it's currently at in my neck of the woods over here in Northern California. And finally I saw it go down to like 5.99, and I was excited. And I thought, that's crazy that I'm excited over going to 5.99.
Right.
Uh, but that's a totally different issue, and it's a totally different podcast. That having been said, it makes a lot of sense. I think one of the big challenges that we see right now with sellers, um, whether you were impacted as a company or as an individual, there was a lot of tough times that were happening, not just from an economic standpoint, but also from an individual standpoint. Many
Yeah.
of us lost people. We had scares of people going into the hospital and the emotional trauma behind
Yep.
that. And then of course the world turned upside down when we had to take our kids at home and school them for a whole entire year or more. And so it was a tough situation. But with every tough situation comes the potential for opportunity.
Mhm.
And I want to just kind of get the idea, and why do you think, why are tough times actually good for an individual?
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was working on the book, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said, "As you've gone through this, is there one thing that has stuck out?" And I said, the one thing that has stuck out is that tough times are good. Right? Tough times are good. They're not pain free, by the way, but they are good. And the reason why, okay, the world as we know it today would not exist times. The prosperity that we've enjoyed over the past decades and decades and decades would not exist without tough times. The relationships that we've built with each other, with our customers, would not exist without tough times. So tough times are good. They don't feel good, but they lead to good in the end. Tough times will spark creativity, because once you learn that, okay, the way we've been doing things isn't necessarily working, you are now finding a new way. Tough times will help remove the mask. I mean, Mario, let's face it, since the Great Recession, we've been on a 10 to 12-year economic run where things have been pretty darn good. All right. During that uptick, during that time of economic prosperity, that will mask bad sales behavior. You can throw a warm body in a hot territory with a good economy and peaking demand, and they're going to be reasonably successful. All right. Once we hit tough times, the mask comes off. We realize, okay, there are problems that we have. There are skills that I'm missing. I'm not as great as I thought I was. So tough times reveal that. They reveal your weakness so that you can get stronger. And tough times also humble you. We think about it. I was talking to my dad this morning about this and how pride happens right before the fall, where sometimes we become too self-absorbed. We feel like, wow, you know what? I'm the man. I made it happen. I hit this deal. I crushed that quota. I did all this. During good economic times and during those big wins, you gain an inflated sense of self. And that blinds you to your true potential. And so a little humility can go a long way, and tough times humble us all. So in that spirit, tough times are good. It'll help catalyze the positive change you need in your life. They don't always feel good, but they lead to good in the end.
It's funny you mentioned tough times spark creativity, and it reminded me of back during the pandemic. There was a company by the name of Cheetah, and Cheetah was a wholesale food distributor. So they sold directly to the restaurants. Now, of course, the restaurants were closed down. So Cheetah decided that they were going to go direct to consumer at giving the wholesale prices. Now, they had no website, they had no infrastructure, they had none of that. So what they did is they decided to throw up a quick website, and they decided to place their Cheetah trucks in specific high traffic areas where they predominantly had serviced some of those areas. And then they decided to use social media and get involved with the moms groups and some of the wife groups that let them know that they were actually going to be posting a truck there. And if they wanted to place an order, they could place an order online and get these items. Now, these items were like, you bought oxtails, and the oxtails was a giant box of 100 oxtails inside there, right? And so, but the pricing of that oxtail box was, if you bought those 100, it was less than buying like 5 pounds at the grocery store. So it was crazy, this pricing. And what they did, it just went totally viral all over Northern California, where they had these spots set up. And what they did is everybody had to come to them. So they would have their truck. You'd have to have your invoice. As soon as you rolled up, there would be a person in the truck. There'd be a person at the taking your invoice. They'd see what you had. They'd go back there from the freezer truck. They'd pull it out, and they would put it into your trunk. And you never had to even roll down your window. You would just put the invoice up to the window, and they would see it, and then they would fill your car and off and go. And so we were buying in this bulk, and we actually bought another freezer in the house. And it was crazy because after that, what Cheetah discovered, now this is all B2C model, but what Cheetah discovered was that they made more money selling to the consumer, and profits and went up, and revenue went up during the pandemic, even though their primary customers were 100% all food establishments, which weren't buying anything. And so they didn't want the food to go bad because they would end up in the hole. What is that what you are talking about in
Oh,
terms of creativity?
absolutely. Tough times reveal those opportunities to those who choose to capture them, to those that take risks, that don't sit and wait it out. That's a great example. I remember reading something about that. I forgot the name of the company, but you're absolutely right. Tough times are good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm with you, and I think we all kind of grow, right? We all learn from our losses.
Yep.
This is what we talk about, even in those who play sports, right?
Hmm.
Every loss is leads up to another win, right? And so I love this concept of tough times are actually good for you. Helps build relationships, sparks creativity. You said helps to be able to identify where you need improvement at.
Hmm.
But talk a little bit about, if you would, Paul. How are buyers influenced by tough times?
Yeah, that's a great question because during tough times, we have to, and good times as well, we have to remember that customers are the ones who define value, and it's their definition of value that truly matters, not what we think it is. All right. So the customer defines value, but the current environment helps define the customer, right? So during tough times, there are a couple things we need to be aware of. Number one, customers focus on cost cutting. All right, that's just basic human nature. Anytime you are thrown in a situation where the future is uncertain or we're facing a downturn, customers have less money to spend, so they're obviously going to streamline their purchasing. They're going to focus more on the necessities than the niceties. Now, Since cost cutting is a primary area of focus for buyers in tough times, it actually creates another opportunity for salespeople. Mario, think about how many salespeople listening to this show focus and provide a solution that helps reduce overall costs, whether it's reducing labor, whether it's helping reduce waste, improve efficiencies. During tough times, customers are more open to creative ways to cut costs. So that really may start out as an objection, but it turns into an opportunity. Now, more decision makers get involved in tough times. And the reason why is because people want to mitigate risk. If I'm a decision maker in an organization, and I can make the shot. I can make the call rather on whether I want to move forward or not. I'm likely to bring more people into the decision making process because I want to spread risk. If things don't work out, I want to be able to point fingers in other directions with me. And not only that, there's a herding mentality that we have. It's basic human nature that there is going to be strength in numbers. And so get ready for more people to get involved in the decision making process. That's going to be part of it. And not only that, but look to your market leaders in the industries in which you're selling. Look at the market leaders in that industry that you're selling to. What they do typically sets the pace for everyone else. All right. All the other companies, they're trying to gather information on what they should do, what strategic decisions they should make. And if a market leader in an industry says, okay, we're going to reduce the workforce, be prepared for that to trickle down. If a market leader says we're going to continue to invest in our business during this tough time, that's also a great tool you can use to draw some analogy and parallels to when you're trying to sell your solution. So there's this, if we could sum it up in two words. Herding and hoarding. They're going to hoard resources and they're going to herd around each other for strength in numbers. That's what happens.
Yeah, we certainly saw that in the sales process, that there was the idea of necessities versus niceties.
Hmm.
And that actually impacted the training industry pretty significantly during the pandemic. Is people thought, well, I don't necessarily need to have this, or I'm going to be able to do this in a different way.
Hmm.
How can I cut costs? We can't get everybody together. That's a good news.
Hmm.
But what was interesting is many organizations cut costs as a result of no travel,
Right.
yet they didn't reinvest those funds back into areas that they needed to, like into training their sellers, which was a pretty bad in many cases because so many companies actually wanted to save onto that money and hold for a just in case situation.
It's what's interesting is I noticed it in our training business, certainly live events went away, but the virtual training component um, really took off, and it's remained as well. And I think what happens, and we can talk about this when you're selling through tough times, and we'll use training as an example. It's viewed as a maybe a nicety, although we always believe it's a necessity. The perception of the customer is, okay, should we be spending money on this? Sometimes during those uncertain moments, your customers are looking for you as the leader, as a salesperson to be a leader, to help provide guidance and painting scenarios and saying, hey, many of your competitors are sitting around waiting, trying to figure out what to do. Your salespeople are sitting around not really knowing what to do. We've got some ideas on how we can help them right now. And by the way, you have the money, right? Sales, other than like the first month or two, most of my clients, at least, their sales really stabilized and in many cases went up. And now they had all these other, you know, travel budgets that they're no longer using. It was simply a matter of getting in front of that right decision maker and having them shift funds. Because money's fungible, right? That's one thing that we got to remind our customers of during tough times is that, hey, when this budget is surplus, you can shift it over here as well. In there.
Yeah, fair point. And even individuals,
Mhm.
if you defined tough times earlier as impact on a global scale, could be economic standpoint, could be company related
Mhm.
or individual related, and there's many sellers who are facing tough times because we know that the numbers are 60% of sellers will hit their number, 40% do not. That's a
Mhm.
significant amount of tough times, right, for an individual seller, sales manager, sales director, sales VP. um, but I think one of the problems is that individuals have is defining value. during
Mhm.
these tough times. And I'd love to be able to get your insight on how does a sales leader, sales manager, sales rep, how do you redefine your value during these tough times?
Yeah, that is an important note. When customers make decisions during these uncertain times, there are elements of value that are going to be important, such as stability, longevity, improving cash flow. These are some of the value-added outcomes and extras that companies are looking for. The stability component. I'll give you an example of this. I was working with a sales team during the pandemic, and this company's been around for 100 years. They've been through the Great Depression, all right, and we're talking about what makes them unique in the marketplace, their unique selling proposition. And what I suggested is that, hey, your company has been around longer than anyone else in the industry. You were the first in the industry to do this, and you've been doing it for 100 years. And one salesperson asked, I said, Paul, do our customers really care if we've been around for 100 years? And I said, right now they do. And the reason why is because your company has made it through the Great Depression, through several recessions, made it through inflation. You've made it through turmoil, geopolitical uncertainty. Your company has made it through all of these things. Your customers want to partner with companies that have weathered the storm before. Because if you've made it through all that stuff, you're going to make it through this. You're going to come out even better. They're looking for that stable footing, that stability as we go through tough times. So it's important to highlight that as part of your value proposition during tough times. Flexibility also becomes important. And this is where smaller, more nimble companies can really have an advantage during tough times. If you're a Fortune 500 organization and you're selling to a customer, you have policies in place, you have procedures, you have rules, there's protocols, there's a hierarchy. All right. If you're a smaller competitor, typically it's one or two phone calls to get to the owner of the company or the executives that can make the call. And you're able to change pretty quickly. During tough times, customers want flexible partners. They want people that are going to work with them, not against them. They want to work with companies that make it easy to do business with them. So, and customers become hypersensitive to that during tough times because they're scrutinizing every dollar they spend. And if they're investing a significant amount of money in a partnership with you, they expect you to be flexible to them. So that's going to be extremely important as you go through tough times.
Reminds me of a story. I was the global account director for a large Fortune 100 company, and I
Hmm.
was managing a Fortune at that time 16 company. Now it's a
Okay.
Fortune 4. Now it's a Fortune 4. And they went out to RFP because they wanted to significantly cut costs. They hired a CPO, and that CPO was given a target 30% cost savings on IT infrastructure
Mm.
and everything in between. So he was on a mission to cut costs by 30%. And so we knew of that initiative, and of course, we wanted to be flexible and easy to do business with. The story goes essentially was they came in, did an RFP. It lasted for 4 months. We were the incumbent for now 8 years standing. Yeah.
Okay.
And strong relationship at every single possible level. Well, we came in with only about a 15% cost savings. And the other providers came in with a 30% cost savings. All right. Their target was a 30% cost savings. So they came back to us and they said, look, you're going to lose all the business if you don't give a further discount. And we said, there's no way we can give you a further discount. We cannot service and support your account. And oh, by the way, neither can the other two. Because if you were to convert on a 30%, they would have to invest and you would have to invest about $2.5 million, which would negate all of your savings by having to build this proprietary connection between your system and our system, right? And so we knew that, they knew that, yet the CPO didn't like the fact that we weren't coming down on price. So they ended up making a decision to go away from the company that we were with. And we got the email. My VP, SVP, they all called me, and I said, "Hold on, um, let me make one more phone call." So we got the email. We were out. They were going to transition out. They were going to sign another contract. So I called the CIO, who, by the way, mind you, came to my wedding. And I had a very tight relationship. We went to the Madonna concert together, our wives and us, right? So I had this back channel, and I called the CIO and I said, "All right, you guys made the decision." He says, "Yeah, I heard you guys didn't come down on pricing." I said, "Yes, that's because you guys have to have this cost of infrastructure that you're going to have to calculate." And he said, "Well, I'm sure that they've done their job." And I said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask him two questions. I can guarantee you that he doesn't know the answer to those two questions." And so he said, "Okay, what are they?" Gave him the questions, and they were all around this tight integration. And so he said, "Okay, I'll go in, I'll ask the questions, and let's see what happens." So he popped in. He said, "This is what exactly what he did." He said, "I popped into his office, said, 'Hey, great job on that evaluation. Great job in saving us 30%. This is exactly what our CEO wants. Really excited. Hey, by the way, two things. One, question A. Two, question B. And the questions around, what are you going to do with this integration, and how are we going to solve that problem?'" CPO said, "Hey, that's a good question. I don't have an answer to that." So it turns out that he didn't have the answer to that. And when he found out the cost, it actually was about a $5 million cost to do that integration. So he came back and said to the CIO, "You know what? We decided we were just going to stay with the current provider in that time." So the CIO called me up, and this was about all happening within about a 4-week period, right? And the whole entire executive team, they were on pins and needles, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just hold, just hold. I know this. I know what's going to happen." CIO called me up and said, "I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you knew it, but FYI, they haven't told you yet publicly, but we're going to stay with you guys." And I said, "I thought so." So
That's a booyah moment,
and
right?
that was a
Just
booyah moment. That's exactly right. So we actually signed off on a $50 million contract in that particular regard. And I knew it. I knew that they had not calculated
yeah.
this cost, and it was falling on deaf ears. Like somebody was a bean counter, but that was a really tough time, right? Because my entire
Oh,
career was spent on that particular deal. And if I didn't make that deal, we lost that much revenue. That, oh my gosh, what a total ginormous impact. But that in and of itself, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, is a moment in time called tough times.
yeah.
But what led up to this was following the system and the process, but all about having these key buyers and influencers that you could call on to be able to get your support.
Yeah.
Any comments on that? What am I?
Yeah. No, that Mario, what's great is the success of that sale, right? The success you experienced in your company, that happened as a result of you doing all the right things prior to it. You knew the opportunity, but you had broad and deep and high relationships within within this infrastructure there. So that is absolutely critical. Um, you think about the process of selling. It's about finding the right targets, pursuing targets the right way. And one thing we've noticed during tough times, you're going to get more people involved, right? Other people are going to be more curious about the process. If it impacts them, they're going to be part of the process as well. But it also gives you an opportunity to go higher within an organization. Typically, what will happen during a recession or a downturn, whatever we may be in, you take a VP who has authority to spend up to $20,000 without getting approval. Well, typically what will happen, they still have that $20,000 threshold, but now they're going to check with their boss. Hey, just to give you a heads up of what we're doing here. And they're going to bring their boss into the fold or that executive. Purchasing decisions get kicked up a little bit higher because everyone is a little nervous about making the wrong decision. Fear is what drove that chief procurement officer that you talked about to come back to you and say, "Yeah, we're just going to stick with you," because although they were going to save another 15% by going with that other competitor, that wasn't nearly as enough to overcome the fear of, okay, well, what if we got to go back and pay 5 million back? What if I make the wrong decision? Now it's going to be my head on the chopping block. All of that fear plays a role, and it becomes exaggerated during tough times. Everyone feels it.
Yeah, well, funny you should mention that. In that particular scenario, the net difference after you added that $5 million back in was about a 5% delta,
Oh,
right?
wow. Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and so that 5% delta, everybody internally in the organization said, we have hundreds of thousands of wireless subscriber infrastructure. Do you know what the cost would be to transition just for a 5% savings? And
Yeah.
it didn't make sense. So at that point, that's when we knew, no, we had it in the bag, and it was because of a mindset, right? And that mindset really
Mhm.
is super important throughout that 6 month long process. That you know where you're going to go. You're using value added selling capability sets and relationships, and what did you call that? The creative sparking creativity, right?
Yeah.
Sparking creativity. And I knew I
Right.
had the trump card in my back pocket, but I
Mhm.
couldn't use it unnecessarily,
Right.
and or I had to sparingly use that trump card, which was my relationship with the CIO, who essentially owned the total impact. So we didn't hit their mark, but it would have been too costly for them to convert off when you add all that back in. So do me a favor. What is the mindset that you think someone needs to be able to thrive during tough times?
Yeah. It's interesting. There's so many books out there, great books, by the way, that focus on mental resilience. Books like Grit, Angela Duckworth's book, phenomenal book. But what I've noticed, there really isn't a book out there that is geared towards salespeople who are constantly facing tough times and frustrating moments that addresses the right mindset and what it takes to be successful in sales. Because I do believe, and I think you'd agree that so much of success in selling is mental. It's how we prepare. So in the book, we talk a lot about positive mental programming. Positive mental programming. We're talking about technology. So you think about a computer. A computer is going to do exactly what you program it to do, right? Well, if we could mentally program ourselves in a similar way, then we can be prepared to go out there and handle the tough moments of selling. So we go through a lot of skills and ideas, and one thing we talk a lot about in the book is the daily mental flex. The daily mental flex is a collection of exercises that focus on building mental resilience. And these 6 exercises include a focus on gratitude. Right? Gratitude is so important to put you in the right mindset to begin your day. There's been countless research showing that it reduces cortisol level. It lowers your risk of heart attacks. It helps you feel happier. Adam Grant did a study and he found that uh, fundraisers who were thanked for their effort made 50% more calls than those who did not. So for sales leaders listening, if you want to increase the volume and the work that your people are doing, thank them for it. That's part of it. So gratitude is critical. And then also, um, you know, every day we have those list of things we don't feel like doing, the not to do list, maybe we call it. Every time we do something that we don't really feel like doing, we build self-discipline. We're able to delay gratification. That helps us become mentally stronger. That's part of it. Um, Spending 10 to 15 minutes on a continuous improvement exercise every day. That's another exercise within the daily mental flex. Positive reframing. Training our brain to literally find the positive outcomes from negative situations. What we're doing is we're rewiring our brain not to focus on negative events, but to seek out the positive things that happen as a result of tough times. And then setting ourselves up for success is another exercise. And the final one is pruning and planting. It's about pruning negativity from our life and planting positivity in its stead. And what this will do every single day is it makes us a little bit stronger. Imagine if we dedicated as much time to building mental strength as we did physical strength. Think about how much of a better position we'd be in. So we talk so much about that, and there are several exercises as well on just monitoring your self-talk. If you want to predict the future, listen to your thoughts, right? And what you're telling yourself. So yeah, the book is just chock full of ideas to help you become mentally strong. And once you have that mental strength, we focus on the skills to help you to fill it in.
Love that. Great tips right there.
Mhm.
There are some characteristics, though,
Yeah.
that people need. Um, to be able to deal and cope with tough times.
Mm,
I think you talk about that in the book, Selling Through Tough Times. What
mhm.
are, do you talk, is it 7 characteristics?
Yeah, yeah, seven
Talk
characteristics.
about
And
that.
yeah, so just an overview. Tough timers, they're resilient, they're visionary, they're pragmatic optimists, they're opportunistic, adventurous, and they're also steadfast and humble. So those are really the characteristics, and I'd be happy to speak to any one of them. But a few that come to mind is that they're pragmatic optimists, and what that means is they're not the sunshine and rainbow and unicorn type of positive, optimistic. They are practical optimists, and I think about that. The best description is likely from the Stockdale paradox from Jim Collins' Good to Great book, which is a wildly popular book. And just to refresh everyone, Admiral Stockdale was captured during the Vietnam War. He spent years in the Hanoi Hilton, as it was called, the Hanoi prison camp. And Jim Collins asked Admiral Stockdale, how was it that you were able to survive this? Countless torturings and all that. And he said something along the lines of, you must, always maintain that faith, that unwavering faith that you will survive and that somehow this is going to be a defining moment in my life. But at the same time, you must confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. And that was the paradox piece, is that you knew you were going to survive, but you had to address what was right in front of you. And what was interesting is Stockdale asked, or said, when asked by Collins who didn't survive, and he said the optimists. The optimists in these camps were the ones who said, we'll make it out by spring. Spring would come and go, and then they'd still be there. Oh, we'll make it out by summer. Summer would come and go, and they wouldn't make it. We'll be out by the winter. Winter would come and go, and they were there again, and they became deflated. So that's what happens as we go through tough times, and this is true in all aspects of our life, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally. You have to maintain that unwavering faith that you're going to make it through. You're going to make it through, and you are eventually going to look at this tough time in your life and realize that, wow, because of this, I've become this much stronger. You build this foundation of resilience that's going to help you navigate the next tougher time with greater ease, and it's also going to encourage you to take greater risks, to make bold moves. Tough times are good in that regard. They're good for you, and so they're pragmatic optimists for sure, and that's just one of the seven characteristics. And we took this information based on our 40-year track record of training some of the best salespeople through tough times, through good times. These seven characteristics were pretty common among them.
Maintain unwavering faith that you will make it through, and focus in on resilience. There have been many times in my career, personal as well as business, where I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Mhm.
And I said to myself, I need to call somebody to help me get through this. And
Yeah.
what I did was, Paul, is I would call up a trusted confidant, oftentimes in the business and career, and I'd say, Sherry, here's my situation. I don't think I'm going to make it. I need a pick me up. Help me see that I'm going to be able to make this. That's what I need right now. And it would be, whether it be Sherry, whether it be Brandon, or close friends of mine that are in business, and boom, it'd be like, you are going to do it because you've always done it. And this is what your track record shows. And this is how you should be thinking about this right now. Yes, it's tough because, but you will be able to, right? And so those are, I think oftentimes you've called that the pragmatic optimists. There are many occasions where individuals don't think they can do it. But the key to this is, surrounding yourself with other people who can help you see the optimistic approach and or the optimistic view that it can be done, and that you don't have to do it on your own. It's almost like the buddy system, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think that's one of the things that are missing inside of our sellers is they usually look to their sales manager, but then they all of a sudden get on performance improvement plan or PIP because they're not performing. And all of a sudden their sales manager no longer becomes the person that they thought was their confidant that was going to help them get to the next step. They're wondering whether or not the person wants them out of the business. Man, for those that got put on PIP in my organizations, I ran side by side with them and I said to them, always, I'll guarantee one thing. I'll run faster than you and harder than you at all times. When you stop, I'll keep running. Right. So I think a lot of folks really need to think about that because that's tough when you have to look to your manager as a person who's going to help you. But if that person's not doing it for you, go
Hmm.
find somebody who will.
Find a mental role model. That's one thing we talk about. Um, I throughout my career, I've met so many great salespeople, leaders, and many of them have gone through horrendous things in their life. Things that I wouldn't share on the podcast, professionally, personally, and those individuals continuously they stay above the fray. They're able to bounce back even stronger. Finding those mental role models is key because when you get at those tough moments, you can ask yourself, okay, what would they do in this situation? How would they respond? And if you're closely connected with them, you do what you do, and that's you pick up the phone and say, hey, I need a pick me up. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mr. Paul Reilly, excellent, excellent details here. Selling through tough times,
Mhm.
grow your profits and mental resilience through any downturn, whether it's personal or economic that is impacting you. Where can they go and get the book, Selling Through Tough Times?
Yeah, so selling through tough times is available wherever you get your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, Porchlight, I think is the old 800 CEO reads. Anywhere you get your books, you can find it. It's also available as an Audible book, so on the Audible app, or you can buy a CD for it as well. I'm certainly the most active on LinkedIn. That's where I'd love to connect with any of your audience members. We're selling a lot of sales related content every single week, tips, ideas, things to pick you up.
So if you want to connect with Paul, it's Paul Reilly, Reilly on LinkedIn. Make sure you reach out to him and please make sure you send him a personalized connection request notice that says, hey, I heard you on the Modern Selling podcast so that the guy knows who you are, where you came from. Please make sure you do that.
Yeah.
Paul, I always ask one question here at the end,
Mhm.
and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Absolutely. And Mario, I got the answer for you. One thing I forgot to mention, if it's okay,
Sure.
if your audience wants to check out the website toughtimer.com, I actually have a complimentary chapter of the book that focuses on crafting the perfect customer message during tough times. It's chapter 14 in the book. It's available absolutely free if they visit toughtimer.com and go to the book page. But to answer your question, my favorite movie of all time is actually quoted in the book, chapter 17. Let's do something fun. I'm going to read the quote for you, and I want to see if you can
Oh gosh.
tell me the movie. All right.
I'll do my best, but I'm
All right.
horrible at this.
Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. And that was by Andy Dufresne, who was the name of this guy from
You got me.
The Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption.
so,
All right.
so I didn't mean to put you on the
That's
spot like
okay.
that.
That's okay.
Oh,
I'm horrible at
yeah.
actors' names and
And
movie names. I just
yeah.
remember what I saw. That's all I
Yeah.
remember.
No, that's my favorite movie, hands down, all time. It's one of those where we own the movie, but if it's on TV, like TBS or
Yeah, yeah.
something like that, I'll just start watching it there, and I just watch it all the way through. Love the movie, and it's a great movie when you're going through tough times as well.
Well, there you have it. Shawshank Redemption, toughtimer.com. Get out there and order the book, Selling Through Tough Times. And for all of you listening in right now, hey, don't turn that dial just yet. Listen to this important message right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.